Good teams win, great teams cover. The Illini covered in their matchup on Friday night, but are they a great team? I rewatched the tape, and I'll give you my thoughts.
You are Locked On Illini, your daily podcast on the Illinois Fighting Illini. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome all to another edition of Locked On Illini, slightly abbreviated edition. But regardless, thank you guys for joining us. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen each and every day. My name is Sonny Verma, your host here at Locked On, where I'll continue to provide coverage every day, as long as I can, of the Illini, especially now that the season has started. A new thing that I'm going to try to start doing, this is kind of the first edition of it, because there's so much things to talk about when it comes to news stories and me only having a half hour each day. Every now and then I'm going to release a "and one more thing" episode where it's going to be slightly abbreviated, not the normal half hour that you're used to, probably closer to anyway 7 to 12 minutes, but just kind of bullet points, bullet notes. And I'm going to in particular try to do that for after the games. Obviously, a lot of you guys joined us, almost 100 of you joined us immediately live after the game against Western Illinois on Friday night. Those are just rapid reactions, initial reactions. Well, the game ended around 11:30, or at least that's when the stream ended. And then I just popped the game right back on, and that way I could just actually take notes and have a better feel for what actually happened now that I knew what the final score was. And I can turn my fan brain off and turn my analyst brain on. And basically, I'm going to come back, as I am right now, and just kind of give some of my thoughts on what I saw. We'll start with the good. As for against Western Illinois, it was a 52-3 victory. Obviously, there was a lot of good when you win a game by 49 points. But as I mentioned on social media, you saw Bret Bielema and some of those players not exactly look too happy walking off the field after that final whistle. And that's kind of what I want. And that's kind of what makes me a little more excited. If you really think about it right now, imagine. If you've been a fan for a while now, imagine that Illinois football wins 52-3 and you're not completely satisfactory. Because that's where we're at now. Illinois won by 49 points. It was a 48.5 point spread. Illinois covered that spread, 52-3. And you can still tell that the coaching staff wasn't satisfied. The players in the postgame interviews weren't satisfied. And of course, and it matters the least, the fan base wasn't satisfied. So if Bret Bielema is not content with the 49-point win, then there's no reason we should be. And so there are going to be a couple things I want to point out that I'm kind of concerned with a little bit later. But I want to start off with on a positive note, because I'm a positive guy. And the one guy that just jumped out at me, we'll talk about Hank Beatty later. We'll talk about Gabe Yakas later. I need to talk about Luke Altmaier. We scored 52 points because of the way Luke played. His numbers aren't super flashy. He ended up at 17 for 21 and throwing for 3 touchdowns. But if you take a look at those touchdowns, Luke made some plays, made some throws that were just pinpoint accurate. And he lived up to all that initial hype that he's essentially been getting all offseason about being one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten Conference. He showed it yesterday. He didn't necessarily need to, or did he? We'll talk about that in a little bit. But some of the poise was there. I'm not going to give him an A+ game because, as I mentioned on the post-game show, he kind of turned into sophomore Luke Altmaier in some aspects. He took 2 or 3 sacks where it's just like, Luke, what are you doing? Just throw the ball away. And we ended up losing 4, 5, 6 yards on a single sack. But I think that's going to be correctable. And maybe that's just kind of first game, get those little wrinkles out. But overall, Luke looked every bit the Luke that Illini fans have been excited for all offseason. And if that's a Luke Altmaier that's going to show up against Duke next week and that Big Ten schedule for the rest of the year, I think Illinois is in really good shape at the quarterback spot. And if you're a fan of college football, you know that if you're good at quarterback, well, then you've got a leg up on most of the teams in college football. Hank Beatty, of course, 133 punt yards returned, breaking Red Grange's record, finally returns a punt returned for a touchdown, something that Illini fans have been clamoring for. It's been over a decade since we've been able to do that. But again, I watched Hank, and Hank basically looks like he's leveling up from the previous years. And really, that's all we can ask for. Was it a superstar game? I'm not sure about that in particular. He just looked like a better version of last year, which for now we will take. But the other guy, Justin Bowick, who I considered my flag player, if you watched that episode a couple weeks ago with Jeremy Warner, I think Justin played the role that I envisioned him playing. And that I talked about him playing in that class. I'm going to release a short where you can watch me recap what I basically said. I said that Justin, at 6'4", the guy's like 210 pounds. We're losing a lot of touchdowns between Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. And we don't know what Cole Rusk is going to look like. So when it comes to the red zone, who is Luke going to trust? We don't know who Luke is going to trust on the wide receiver corps in any sort of position. But at least in the red zone, I thought that Justin Bowick would be that guy. And he scored 2 touchdowns. Quite honestly, he should have had 3, if not for him slowing down on one of the runs. And hopefully that's going to be corrected in film, and he's going to realize, hey, he can't do that, because Justin could have had 3 touchdowns at this point, and he would have been talked about a lot more. He only had 23 yards. Again, it would have been more if that second touchdown had connected. But I think we can solidly say that he's going to be one of, if not the red zone target for Luke Altmaier moving forward. So Hank Beatty, Justin Bowick, I think very plus night. The rest of the crew, I don't see it. At least I didn't see it against Western Illinois. And that's concerning, because Western Illinois isn't Duke. They're quite honestly, of course, the easiest game on our schedule. And some of these guys had trouble getting separation from Western Illinois defensive backs. And of course, that's going to be a little cause for concern. They made plays, but I feel like they made plays on the backs of Luke Altmaier's perfect throws. And so that's something that we're going to have to all keep in mind and pay attention to moving forward, because we're going to need that. Room can be as talented as they are, and they are talented. But it was one of the biggest concerns over the offseason. Who's going to replace Pat? Who's going to replace Zachary? And right now, I think Hank Beatty is going to step up like we all expected him to. I think Justin could be one of the guys, at least a red zone guy. But I don't think anyone can rewatch that game. And let me know in the comment section if you agree or disagree. Maybe you've watched the game and maybe don't agree with what I'm saying. I don't think anyone can rewatch that game and focus on the wide receivers and be like, oh, yeah, they look just fine. I'm not worried about them for the rest of the season. I will also say we are so grateful that Gabe Yakis is coming back. You talk about a man-child. This guy should be playing on Sundays. This guy should be playing on Thursdays. And for some reason, somehow, Brett Bielema convinced Gabe to come back. And I've seen lists where he's listed as a top 15 player in the Big Ten Conference. That's ridiculous. I'm telling you, Gabe Yakis is maybe potentially a top 15 player in the entire country. He's that good. I know Western Illinois, of course, would have nobody to match up against a guy like Gabe, who should be playing at the NFL level. But even with taking that into account, Gabe was absolutely dominant, and I really do think that the performance he had against Western Illinois is absolutely going to translate to Duke. It's going to absolutely translate to USC and all those tough games moving forward. And it's going to be imperative that we keep Gabe healthy, because that defense looked really, really good last night. Outside one player, that defense looked really solid to me, and that was a championship-winning defense. But it's a championship-winning defense because you have the elite rusher in a guy like Gabe Yakis. And so, Illini fans, I have said this before, we need to be grateful that he's decided to spend one more year in Illinois. And it's not just that he ignored the NFL. In years past, the SEC has come calling, and he's always trusted Brett Bielema. He's always trusted the Illinois coaching staff, and now you kind of see why. He's the storybook of why defensive players can trust Brett, because Brett will always develop you to your max potential. Okay, you might make more money elsewhere, but if you want to truly become the football player you're capable of becoming, come to Illinois, because Brett he himself will have a hand in that, and he'll hire the guys who are going to maximize your potential. And you can look no further than Gametime as proof of that. On the other side, Caleb Patterson, I'll be nice, he didn't look very good. And to be able to be taken advantage of by FCS wide receivers, that's kind of a problem. Now, Brett Bielema, we obviously didn't know why Jaheim Clark did not start yesterday, and the same thing with Brandon Henderson. And it turns out that we'll start with Clark. Clark popped a hammy a couple weeks ago, and according to Brett, he doesn't necessarily think that Clark will be ready for Duke, but he doesn't think it's going to be a long-term thing either, that he should be ready in 2 to 3 weeks. But I'll be honest, if you watch that game, we're probably going to need Clark back sooner rather than later. That Duke quarterback, despite Duke being tied in the third quarter, I know everyone's making a very big deal about that. Please don't let your guard down. Duke is still going to be a good football team. Okay, Manny Diaz is going to have that team ready. And again, Duke's quarterback is going to be one of the best quarterbacks we're going to be facing all season long. And having a good quarterback is a cheat code in college football. That's why Illinois is so lucky to have a good one. But I mean, there's no other way to put it. Patterson's got to watch that tape and forget everything that happened after. He's got to get ready, get in the right mindset, because we're going to need him to step up, because I think he's going to be targeted now. Everyone who watched that tape is going to be thinking the same thing. Hey, that's the guy to attack. And so I do hope that Patterson takes this as a learning experience, because he was absolutely exploited. Speaking of exploited, the right side of that offensive line, oh boy. Brett Bielema said it himself at halftime, saying the guy on our right guard is trying to essentially lose his own job. And it's a mystery, right? A lot of us Illini fans were so optimistic thinking about this offensive line. And I'm not saying I'm less optimistic, but there's at least cause for concern now. All that experience coming back. Brandon Henderson didn't start, and when asked in the postgame press conference, Brett Bielema said essentially that Brandon was late for a meeting, and this was one of those teaching moments. I respect that. I get that. But regardless whether he was in or when his backup was in, the other Brandon, it still didn't look like it should look. And when I say should look, I mean top 6, top 7 unit in the Big Ten Conference. Now, overall, I'm not going to blame them for Luke Altmaier's sacks. Those are on Luke, as I mentioned earlier. Those were just him holding on to the ball too long. But this is also why I talked about in past weeks J.C. Davis's injury. And I was like, hey, a lot of people in the comment section were saying, hey, you don't need J.C. Davis for Western Illinois. Just keep him healthy and get him ready for Duke. The offensive line, more than any other position in football, I believe, needs reps and cohesion. You need to know where the guys to your left and right, what they're going to do, and that you can trust them. And that's why I do think the starters were kept in a little bit longer than usual on the second rewatch. You know, the starters are in well into the fourth quarter. And someone had mentioned it in the Talk Illini Discord, by the way. Link should be in the description. And that made a lot of sense. And you want to keep getting those reps, because you might be up 46-3 at that point. But you're in for a dogfight next week. And so you want to get those reps in, because real game play is infinitely more valuable than just practice play. And so I think Brett wanted to get more of that play on tape, and so that they can go over it with the coaching staff this upcoming week. All in all, I don't know if my opinion on the team has changed all that much from week 1 compared to where I was at week 0 when I was projecting out what this team is going to look like. Gabe Jacas is a star, and I truly do believe he's one of the 15 best players in all of college football. I don't know if we have any other players that I would consider superstars when it comes to college football, and that's why I'm confirmed that I don't think this is an 11-win team and probably not a 10-win team. I do think it's closer to anywhere from a 7 to 9 win team. 9 was my initial projection, and I think clearly now the position to pay most attention to is going to be the wide receiver room. Because do these guys progressively get better week by week? Historically, teams get better or at least they make the biggest jump from weeks 1 to week 2. So I'm very curious to see how this team looks against Duke next Saturday. The spread has jumped from Illinois -2.5 to, I believe, -4. And let's be honest, we know Brett Bielema said so himself in the press conference that he's not going to show everything on tape against Western Illinois. So I think we're going to get a better glimpse of what this team looks like against Duke. But right now, I'm going to stand by my prediction at about 9 wins. I probably feel a little less confident in it, just considering the rest of our schedule, but it's something we'll see moving forward. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap it up here. Again, I'm going to do these shorter, abbreviated episodes, calling it One More Thing, as often as I can during the week, and in particular, the next day after I get to watch the game as an analyst, and I could just kind of jot some notes down and not be so emotionally invested because I know the results. If you do enjoy these one-off episodes, please let me know in the comment section. I got a whole lot of more content coming for you. I did bullet points, right? This episode is just bullet points. I already know which ones I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into for full segments and episodes this upcoming week. If there's something you want me to look over or discuss on next week's show schedule, please let me know in the comments section now, or let me know, find me on your favorite social media, or email me at talkillini@gmail.com. This is kind of technically my show, but I want it to be a show that you guys want to watch. So if there's a topic you guys want addressed, let me know and I'll talk it over. Otherwise, great game overall by the Illini, 52-3. You should never not be happy that you won by 49 points. But the rest of you, on Saturday, there's a clean slate of football, a lot of good football games on. I plan on relaxing now, and then we'll see you probably on Monday on Locked On Illini. Until then, ILL. Love you guys.